Nathan Reed's fingers crashed down on the piano keys. The melody rose through Sterling Corporation's Christmas gala like a ghost breaking free from its grave. 300 guests fell silent. Champagne glasses froze mid-air. Victoria Sterling, the most powerful CEO on the Eastern Seaboard, stopped breathing. That song. That exact song. The one her first love wrote for her 16 years ago, the night before he died in a car crash. No one alive knew that melody. No one. Her legs gave out. She gripped the railing knuckles, white heart shattering. The janitor kept playing. And when their eyes finally met across that crowded room, Victoria saw something that made her blood run cold. He recognized her too. Comment what city you're watching from so I can see how far this story travels. Nathan Reed had learned a long time ago how to become invisible. It was a skill born from necessity, sharpened by years of survival, perfected through the quiet humiliation of watching the world forget you existed. At 53 years old, he moved through Sterling Corporation's headquarters, the way he moved through life unnoticed, unremarkable, forgettable. The maintenance uniform helped. Gray shirt, gray pants, gray man. Nobody looked twice at the guy pushing a mop bucket down the hallway. Nobody wondered what dreams he'd buried, or what songs still haunted him at 3 a.m. when sleep refused to come. That was fine. Nathan preferred it that way. "Daddy, are we really going to a party?" Lily's voice cut through his thoughts. His 7-year-old daughter bounced beside him, her hand warm and small in his calloused palm. Her dark curls were wild, despite his best efforts with the brush that morning, and her brown eyes sparkled with an excitement that made Nathan's chest ache. "It's a company Christmas party," he said. "They invited all the employees this year, even us. Even the janitors. Even the janitors." Lily considered this. "Do janitors get presents?" Nathan laughed, a rare sound rusty from disuse. "I don't think so, sweetheart, but there might be cookies." "Chocolate cookies?" "Maybe. And hot chocolate." "We'll see." Lily squeezed his hand tighter. "This is going to be the best Christmas ever." Nathan didn't answer. He just held onto her hand and tried not to think about the overdue electric bill waiting at home, or the radiator that clanked all night, or the fact that his daughter's winter coat was 2 sizes too small because he couldn't afford a new one. He tried not to think about a lot of things. The lobby had been transformed. White lights cascaded from the ceiling. A massive Christmas tree dominated the space near the elevators. Ornaments glittering like frozen tears. Men in tailored suits and women in designer dresses clinked glasses and laughed at jokes that cost more than Nathan's monthly rent. He felt Lily press closer to his leg. "It's okay," he murmured. "Just stay close to me." They moved along the edges of the room, skirting the crowd like shadows avoiding light. Nathan spotted the dessert table in the corner and steered Lily toward it. At least she could have some chocolate. At least he could give her that. "Henry!" Nathan turned. Big Mike from the loading dock was waving him over a drink in his meaty hand. "I didn't know you were coming tonight," Mike said, grinning. "And who's this little princess?" Lily hid behind Nathan's leg. "This is Lily," Nathan said. "Lily, say hello to Mr. Mike." "Hello," Lily whispered. Mike crouched down to her level. "You know what, Lily, I heard? There's a chocolate fountain over there. You ever seen a chocolate fountain?" Lily's eyes went wide. "A fountain made of chocolate. A whole fountain. You can dip strawberries in it and everything." Lily looked up at Nathan. "Daddy, can I?" "Go ahead, but stay where I can see you." She was off like a shot, her small shoes clicking across the marble floor. Nathan watched her go, that familiar mix of love and fear twisting in his gut. She was the only good thing he'd ever done. The only proof that his life hadn't been a complete waste. "Cute kid," Mike said. "She looks just like you. She looks like her mother." Mike's smile faltered. Everyone at the company knew Nathan was a single father. Nobody knew why. Nathan never talked about Sarah, about the cancer that took her 3 years ago, about the medical bills that had swallowed everything they'd ever saved. "Listen," Mike said, lowering his voice. "I heard something today. Management's talking about layoffs after the new year. Maintenance is on the list." Nathan's stomach dropped. "How many?" "Don't know. But word is, they're starting with the guys who've been here the least time." Mike gave him a meaningful look. "You've only been here 3 years, Henry." 3 years. 3 years of 12-hour shifts and aching knees and toilets that never seemed to stay fixed. 3 years of building something stable for Lily after everything fell apart. "Thanks for telling me," Nathan said. "Just watch your back." Mike clapped him on the shoulder. "And enjoy the party. Free food, right?" Nathan nodded, but his mind was already spinning. If he lost this job, what would happen to Lily? There was no family to fall back on, no savings to cushion the blow. Just a little girl who deserved so much better than a father who couldn't even afford to buy her a proper winter coat. He looked across the room to check on his daughter. His blood went cold. Lily had slipped on something champagne, maybe spilled by some careless guest, and was lying on the marble floor crying, her knee bleeding through her white tights. Nathan moved. He didn't remember crossing the room. Didn't remember pushing past the startled executives or knocking someone's drink from their hand. One moment he was standing by the wall, and the next he was on his knees beside his daughter, pulling her into his arms. "It's okay, baby. Daddy's here. Let me see." "It hurts," Lily sobbed. I know. He pulled out the handkerchief he always carried, old habit, Sarah had taught him that, and pressed it gently to the scrape. "It's just a little cut. You're so brave. You're so brave, sweetheart." "Well, this is exactly what we needed." The voice was cold, sharp, dripping with contempt. Nathan looked up. A man in a navy suit stood over them, his face twisted with irritation. He was handsome in a catalog model way, with perfectly styled hair and eyes that held all the warmth of a balance sheet. Nathan recognized him from the company newsletter. Marcus Cole. Some kind of investment big shot. Victoria Sterling's fiancé. "Can you control your child?" Marcus demanded. "She's bleeding all over the floor. Do you have any idea how much this marble costs?" Nathan's jaw tightened. "She's 7. She fell." "Then maybe you should have been watching her instead of standing around like a useless—" Marcus's eyes raked over Nathan's maintenance uniform with undisguised disgust. "What are you even doing here? This is an executive function. There's a staff entrance for a reason." Lily pressed her face into Nathan's chest, her small body trembling. Something cracked inside him, something old and buried and dangerous. He stood slowly, Lily still in his arms, and met Marcus's eyes. "She slipped. She's hurt. And you're worried about the floor." Marcus stepped closer. "Listen to me, you insignificant little—" "That's enough." The voice came from behind them, quiet but carrying the kind of authority that made rooms fall silent. Nathan turned, and time stopped. Victoria Sterling descended the stairs like a queen approaching her throne. She wore a crimson dress that commanded attention without apology, her honey blonde hair falling in soft waves past her shoulders. But it was her eyes that arrested him, ice blue and sharp as surgical steel, the kind of eyes that had seen too much and forgiven too little. Nathan knew those eyes. He'd known them 16 years ago when they were softer, when they'd looked at another man with love instead of calculation, when they'd sparkled with tears as a melody played under a summer sky full of stars. Oh God, it's her. Victoria stopped in front of Marcus, her expression glacial. "You don't have the authority to speak to my employees that way." "Ingrid, I was just—" "Apologize." The word cracked like a whip. The lobby had gone quiet. Everyone watching. Nathan felt the weight of 300 pairs of eyes pressing down on him. Marcus's face flushed red. "Ingrid." "Now, Marcus." For a long moment nobody moved. Then Marcus's lips pressed into a thin line, and he muttered something that might have been an apology if you were generous enough to call it one. Victoria turned to Nathan. Their eyes met. And Nathan saw the exact moment recognition flickered across her face, not of who he was now, but of something else. Something she couldn't quite name. A shadow of a memory. A ghost of a feeling. "Take care of your daughter," she said softly. "The first aid kit is in the executive lounge, 5th floor. Use my private elevator." She gestured toward the brass doors behind the reception desk. Nathan couldn't speak. His throat had closed. He just nodded, pulled Lily closer, and walked away. But he felt Victoria's eyes on him the whole way. The executive lounge was quiet. Leather chairs. A view of the city lights. A kindly assistant named Margaret, who bandaged Lily's knee, gave her hot chocolate with extra marshmallows, and told her she was the bravest little girl she'd ever met. Nathan sat in the corner, watching his daughter smile, and tried to convince himself that his hands weren't shaking. Victoria Sterling. Ingrid Victoria Sterling. He hadn't known. When he took this job 3 years ago, he hadn't made the connection. Sterling was a common enough name, and he'd spent so many years trying to forget that summer, trying to bury the music and the memories and the boy he used to be. But now she was here. 20 feet below him in that crowded lobby, close enough to touch. The girl he'd loved from the shadows. The girl he'd never been brave enough to speak to. The girl for whom he'd written the most beautiful song of his life and then given it away. "Daddy." Nathan blinked. Lily was standing in front of him, her knee bandaged, chocolate on her chin. "Can we go back to the party? I didn't get to see the chocolate fountain." He should say no. He should take her home, lock the door, forget any of this had ever happened. But Lily's eyes were so hopeful, and it was Christmas Eve, and she deserved one good memory from this night. "Okay," he said, "but we're not staying long." The party had grown louder in their absence. Someone had opened the Steinway in the corner, a gorgeous vintage instrument that usually sat covered and silent, more decorative than functional. A group of executives surrounded it, laughing, as a tipsy accountant banged out something that vaguely resembled jingle bells. Lily tugged Nathan toward the dessert table, chattering happily about the cookies Margaret had given her, about the pretty lights, about how the nice lady with yellow hair had helped them. Nathan half listened, his eyes scanning the room for Victoria. He spotted her on the mezzanine level, talking to an older man in a gray suit. Her father, probably. Richard Sterling. The man whose cost-cutting measures had crushed Nathan's hand 12 years ago and ended his career. "Don't think about it. Don't, Daddy." Nathan looked down. Lily was yawning, rubbing her eyes with the back of her hand. "Can you play me my song, the one you play when I can't sleep?" Nathan's chest constricted. "Not here, sweetheart. Please, I'm tired. And that man," she pointed at the accountant murdering Christmas carols, "is giving me a headache." Despite everything, Nathan laughed. "I don't think they want me touching their fancy piano. But you play better than anyone. Better than the man on TV. Better than anyone in the whole world." "Oh, Lily, if you only knew." He looked at the piano, looked at his daughter's sleepy eyes, looked at the crowd of executives who had never once noticed him in 3 years of emptying their trash cans and fixing their broken sinks. What did he have to lose? His dignity. He'd lost that a long time ago. His job. They were probably going to fire him anyway. Maybe just this once. He could be someone again. "Okay," he heard himself say. "Just one song." Lily's face lit up like a Christmas tree. Nathan approached the piano. The accountant saw him coming and stopped mid-chord confusion, giving way to recognition, the janitor, and then something like amusement. "You play?" the man asked. "A little." "Well, by all means." The accountant gestured grandly at the bench. "Show us what you've got." A few people chuckled. Nathan heard someone whisper, "Is that the maintenance guy?" He sat down. The keys felt cool under his fingers. Familiar. Like coming home after a long absence to find everything exactly as you'd left it. His right hand throbbed. It always did before he played Phantom Pain from the injury that had stolen his future. But he'd learned to work around it. Years of practice in empty community centers and late nights in their cramped apartment had taught him how to adapt, how to compensate, how to turn weakness into something approaching grace. Lily climbed up beside him on the bench, her head leaning against his arm. Nathan closed his eyes and began to play. The melody started soft. A lullaby, really, that's how it began. Gentle notes falling like snow against a window, quiet and tender and achingly beautiful. But then it grew. It swelled into something else. Something that spoke of longing and loss of love, given freely and never acknowledged, of years spent in shadows, watching someone else's happiness. Nathan's scarred hand moved across the keys with a grace that defied its injury. He played from memory, from the deepest part of his soul, every note a confession he'd never had the courage to speak aloud. The lobby fell silent. Champagne glasses lowered. Conversations died. 300 people stopped what they were doing and turned toward the sound. Because this wasn't just music. This was something else entirely. Something that made you forget where you were, who you were, what you'd lost along the way. This was truth. Up on the mezzanine, Victoria Sterling stopped breathing. Her hand shot out and gripped the brass railing so hard her knuckles turned white. Her heart slammed against her ribs. Her vision blurred. She knew this song. She knew this song. Every note, every pause, every aching phrase. She'd heard it exactly once before, 16 years ago, on a summer night when the stars felt close enough to touch, and a boy named Daniel Hayes had played it just for her. Midnight Promise, he'd called it. It holds everything I feel but can't say. 3 weeks later, Daniel died on a rain-slicked highway. The song died with him. She'd never heard it again. Never let herself think about it, because if she did, the grief would swallow her whole. But now, a stranger was playing it. A janitor. A man she'd never seen before tonight. Playing Daniel's song. Note for perfect note. How Victoria's legs moved without permission. She descended the stairs like a woman in a trance, pulled toward the piano by a force she couldn't resist. Nathan finished the song. The last note hung in the air like a held breath. He opened his eyes and found Victoria Sterling standing 3 feet away, tears streaming down her face, her whole body trembling. "Where did you learn that?" Her voice came out broken, barely above a whisper. "Where did you learn that song?" Nathan's heart stopped. Lily tugged at his sleeve. "Daddy, why is the lady crying?" Victoria didn't move, didn't blink. Her ice-blue eyes burned into Nathan's with an intensity that made him feel like he was being turned inside out. "That song," she whispered. "It was written for me, by someone who died 16 years ago. No one else knew it. No one." She stepped closer, close enough that Nathan could see the flecks of silver in her eyes, the pulse beating wildly in her throat. "Who are you? Who are you?" Nathan opened his mouth. No words came out. Because what could he possibly say? "I'm the ghost of a boy who loved you from the shadows. I'm the invisible man who gave away his heart. I'm the one who wrote your song and then watched another man take credit for it because I was too scared, too poor, too nothing to believe I deserved you." What could he say? "Daddy." Lily's voice was small, frightened. "Can we go home now?" Nathan looked at his daughter, looked at Victoria, looked at the sea of faces staring at them with naked curiosity. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I shouldn't have played that." He grabbed Lily's hand and ran. Victoria stood frozen as the janitor disappeared into the crowd, his daughter in his arms. Her mind was screaming at her to follow, to demand answers, to understand, but her body wouldn't obey. That song. That song. For 16 years it had lived only in her memory, her private grief, her last connection to the boy she'd loved and lost. And now a stranger knew it. How, Ingrid? Marcus's voice irritated and impatient. She barely heard it. "Ingrid, what the hell was that about? Why are you crying over some janitor?" She turned to look at him. Really look at him. And for the first time, she saw him clearly, the calculated charm, the mercenary eyes, the way he measured everything in terms of what it could do for him. Her father had chosen this man for her. A strategic merger. Two powerful families, one unbeatable empire. She'd agreed because she'd stopped believing in love a long time ago. Because love meant loss. Love meant pain. Love meant boys who wrote you songs under starry skies and then died on rain-slicked highways. But now, "I need to find him," Victoria said. "Find who? The janitor?" Marcus laughed. "Ingrid, be serious. You're the CEO of a billion-dollar company. You don't chase after—" "I need to find him." She walked away without looking back. But when she reached the lobby, the janitor was gone. His daughter was gone. The piano stood silent and empty, keys still gleaming under the lights. Victoria placed her hand on the ivory as if she could absorb whatever warmth his fingers had left behind, and she made a decision. She was going to find this man. She was going to find out how he knew Daniel's song. And God help anyone who got in her way. Victoria didn't go home that night. She sat in her office on the 42nd floor, the city lights spreading beneath her like a galaxy of earthbound stars. And she stared at the employee file spread across her desk until the words blurred into meaningless shapes. Henry Nathan Reed, age 53. Hired 3 years ago. Maintenance staff. No college degree. No employment history before age 41. Previous work. Warehouse, grocery store, odd jobs. Emergency contact, Lily Reed, age 7. Daughter. Nothing about music. Nothing about talent. Nothing that explained how a man who spent his nights fixing toilets and changing light bulbs could play like that. Victoria pressed her fingers to her temples. Her head was pounding. Every time she closed her eyes, she heard the melody. Daniel's melody, her melody rising from those scarred hands like a resurrection. How? The question circled her mind like a vulture over carrion. How could he know? She reached for her phone and dialed a number she hadn't called in over a decade. It rang 4 times before a gravelly voice answered. "Hello. Professor Gray. This is Victoria Sterling, Ingrid Victoria Sterling. I don't know if you remember me. Little Ingrid." The voice warmed immediately. "Daniel Hayes's girl. Of course I remember you. My God, it's been years. How are you?" Victoria's throat tightened at the name. Daniel Hayes's girl. That's who she'd been once. Before grief hardened her into something else. "I need to see you," she said. "Tonight, if possible. It's about Daniel. About his music." A long pause. "What's happened?" "I heard someone play Midnight Promise." Silence on the other end. Then, very quietly. "That's not possible." "I know, but I heard it. Every note, Professor, exactly as Daniel played it for me that summer. I need to understand how." Another pause. "Where are you?" "My office, Sterling Tower." "I'll be there in an hour." The line went dead. Victoria sat back in her chair and waited. Edmund Gray arrived at 11:30, a lean man in his 70s, with silver-streaked hair and kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. He'd been Daniel's mentor at the Berkshire Music Academy, the one who'd recognized the boy's genius and nurtured it until the accident stole him away. Victoria met him at the elevator. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Edmund opened his arms, and Victoria CEO billionaire Ice Queen walked into them like a lost child coming home. "You look tired," Edmund said when they pulled apart. "I haven't slept. The song, I can't stop hearing it." She led him to her office, poured 2 glasses of whiskey from the bar in the corner, and handed him one. Then she pulled out her phone and played the video someone had posted to the company's internal network, shaky footage of a janitor at a piano, his scarred hand moving across the keys with impossible grace. Edmund watched in silence, his face unreadable. When the video ended, he set down his glass and removed his glasses to rub his eyes. "That's remarkable," he said quietly. "Is it Midnight Promise, Daniel's song?" "It's the same melody." "Yes." "Then how—" "Ingrid." Edmund held up a hand. "There's something I need to tell you, something I should have told you 16 years ago, but I didn't, because I thought it would hurt you more than help." Victoria's pulse quickened. "What?" Edmund took a long breath. Daniel didn't finish that song. The words didn't make sense. Victoria heard them, process them, but they refused to assemble into meaning. "What do you mean he didn't finish it?" "He wrote the opening. The first 8 bars. They were brilliant. He was always brilliant, but he got stuck. Couldn't figure out where to take the melody. He was frustrated, kept scrapping versions, starting over." Edmund paused, choosing his words carefully. There was another student at camp that summer. Quiet kid. Talented, but overlooked. The kind of boy who played because he had to breathe, not because he wanted fame or recognition. Daniel asked him for help. Victoria's glass trembled in her hand. Help. The other student took Daniel's opening and completed it. Turned those 8 bars into something extraordinary. But then Daniel died, and the song became his legacy. Edmund's voice dropped. "I never corrected the record. I thought it would dishonor his memory. I thought you needed something to hold on to, and taking the song away from you would be cruel." Victoria stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. She walked to the window and pressed her palm flat against the cold glass. 16 years. 16 years of grieving a song that wasn't even Daniel's. 16 years of believing that melody was his final gift to her, his love letter from beyond the grave. And it was all a lie. "Who was the other student?" Her voice came out flat, dead. "I don't remember his name. It's been so long. He didn't fight for credit. When Daniel died, he just disappeared." "The man who played last night." Victoria turned to face Edmund. "Nathan Reed. Could it have been him?" Edmund looked at the frozen frame on her phone screen. Nathan's face illuminated by the piano's reading light, his eyes closed, lost in the music. "I don't know," he admitted. "Maybe, but there's only one way to find out." "Ask him." "Yes." Victoria grabbed her coat. "Then that's what I'll do." But when she arrived at the maintenance department the next morning, Nathan Reed's desk was empty. "Called in sick," his supervisor said, not looking up from his clipboard. "First time in 3 years. Must be something going around." Victoria waited. She sent him a message through the company's internal system, Professional Neutral, requesting a brief meeting at his convenience. No response. She had HR check his emergency contact information. The phone number was disconnected. 3 days passed. Nathan didn't return. On the 4th day, Victoria sent 2 security officers to his listed address, a rundown apartment building on the east side of the city, the kind of place where hope went to die. They came back empty-handed. "Landlord says he left 3 days ago," the lead officer reported. "Paid up his rent through the end of the month, packed up his daughter, and disappeared. No forwarding address. No explanation." Victoria felt something cold settle in her chest. She'd driven him away. Her questions, her intensity, her desperate need for answers had frightened him off. But why? What was he hiding? Or more accurately, what was he protecting? She spent the next week searching. She hired a private investigator. She dug through public records, social media, anything that might give her a clue. Nathan Reed was a ghost. He'd appeared 3 years ago with no past, no history, no connections. Before that, nothing. As if he'd been born fully formed at age 50, with a scarred hand and a broken dream, and a 7-year-old daughter who looked at him like he hung the moon. The investigator found one lead, a community center on the west side where someone matching Nathan's description had been seen playing piano late at night, long after the building was supposed to be closed. Victoria drove there herself. The community center was exactly what she'd expected, peeling paint, flickering fluorescent lights, the smell of mildew and desperation. A handwritten sign on the bulletin board announced a free meal program on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Another offered ESL classes for recent immigrants. The receptionist, a tired-looking woman in her 60s, looked up when Victoria entered. "Can I help you?" "I'm looking for someone. A man named Nathan Reed. He might play piano here sometimes." The woman's expression shifted, guarded now, protective. "We don't give out information about the people who use our facilities. I'm not here to cause trouble. I just need to talk to him." "Are you from the government?" "No." "Police?" "No." "Then I'm sorry I can't help you." Victoria opened her mouth to argue, then stopped. She recognized that look on the woman's face. It was the look of someone who had seen too many vulnerable people hurt by too many powerful ones. Someone who had built walls around the broken and refused to let anyone through. She reached into her purse and pulled out a business card. "If you see him, would you give him this? Tell him I'm not looking for answers anymore. I just want to say thank you for the song." The woman took the card, studied it for a long moment, then looked up at Victoria with something like surprise in her eyes. "Sterling," she read. "As in Sterling Corporation. As in the Sterling Tower downtown." "Yes." "You're the CEO." "Yes." The woman's expression changed again. Not warmer exactly, but more curious. "And you came here yourself, to this neighborhood, to find a man who plays piano." "He played something that mattered to me. A long time ago." The woman was silent for a moment. Then she tucked the card into her pocket. "I can't make any promises. But if I see him, I'll pass along the message." It was something. It wasn't much, but it was something. Victoria thanked her and left. 2 weeks passed. Christmas came and went in a blur of obligations, board meetings, charity galas, an engagement party that Victoria endured with gritted teeth and a smile that felt like broken glass. Marcus was insufferable. Since the night of the Christmas party, he'd been watching her with suspicion, questioning her schedule, demanding to know where she went and who she talked to. He'd heard rumors about her search for the janitor, and it enraged him. "You're embarrassing yourself," he said one evening, cornering her in her office after a late meeting. "People are talking. They're saying you've lost your mind over some nobody maintenance worker. Let them talk. Ingrid, we're getting married in 5 weeks. Do you understand what's at stake? The merger with my firm will make Sterling Corporation the largest real estate developer on the Eastern Seaboard. We'll control billions. And you're willing to throw that away because some janitor played a song that made you cry?" Victoria looked at him. Really looked. And for the 100th time, she wondered how she'd ever agreed to marry this man. Because her father wanted it. Because she'd stopped believing in love. Because it was easier to build empires than to feel anything at all. "Marcus," she said quietly, "I need you to leave." "Excuse me. Leave my office. Now." His face reddened. "You can't just—" "I can. And I am. We'll talk tomorrow. But right now I need to be alone." For a moment she thought he might argue. Then something in her expression must have warned him, because he turned on his heel and stalked out, slamming the door behind him. Victoria sank into her chair and closed her eyes. The melody played in her head. It never stopped. Not really. It was there when she woke up there, when she fell asleep there, in every quiet moment between meetings and decisions, and the endless performance of being Victoria Sterling. Where was he? Where had Nathan Reed gone, and why did it feel like losing him meant losing the last piece of herself that still knew how to feel? The answer came on a night when snow fell thick and heavy, blanketing the city in white silence. Victoria had been working late. She always worked late now because going home meant facing the emptiness of her penthouse apartment and the ghost of a melody she couldn't escape. She was about to call her driver when she heard something. Piano music. Faint, haunting, drifting up from somewhere below. Her heart stopped. She took the stairs, her heels echoing off marble, her breath coming too fast. The lobby was dark. The party decorations had been taken down weeks ago, but a single light glowed near the piano in the corner. And there he was. Nathan Reed sat at the Steinway, his back to her, his shoulders hunched as if bearing an invisible weight. He played Midnight Promise again, but this time it sounded different. Sadder. More resigned. Like a man saying goodbye. Victoria's voice cracked when she spoke. "You came back." Nathan's hands stilled on the keys. He didn't turn around. "I shouldn't have run," he said quietly. "Lily asked me why we left. I couldn't give her a good answer. She liked it here. Liked the cookies the nice lady gave her. Liked watching the lights." He paused. "I owed you the truth, even if you hate me for it." Victoria moved closer, her heels clicking softly on the marble. "I could never hate you for playing beautifully." "That's not what I mean." She stopped directly behind him. "The song, Midnight Promise. Daniel didn't finish it, did he?" Nathan's shoulders tensed. "You talked to Professor Gray." "Yes." "Then you know." "I know someone else completed the song. Someone Daniel asked for help. Someone who never took credit." She stepped around the bench until she could see his face. "Was it you?" For a long moment, Nathan didn't answer. His hands rested on the keys motionless. His eyes, gray-green and achingly honest, stared at some point in the middle distance. Then, very quietly, "Yes, it was me." Victoria's knees nearly buckled. She gripped the edge of the piano to steady herself. "Why?" The word came out raw, desperate. "Why would you do that? Why would you let him take credit?" Nathan finally looked at her, and in his eyes, she saw something that made her breath catch, not shame, not regret, but something older and deeper and impossibly tender. "Because he loved you," Nathan said. "And I was nobody. I don't understand. I was at that music camp on a scholarship I could barely afford. My family had nothing. I worked nights washing dishes at a diner just to pay for my bus fare there and back. I was invisible, the kind of kid people look right through without seeing." He smiled, but there was no joy in it. "And then I saw you, first day of camp. You were standing by the lake laughing at something one of the other girls said, and the sun was in your hair, and I thought—" He stopped, swallowed hard. "I thought I'd never seen anything so beautiful in my entire life." Victoria felt tears building behind her eyes. "Nathan?" "You probably don't remember. Why would you? I was nobody. But I watched you. Every day I watched you laugh with Daniel, watched the way your eyes lit up when he played. And I thought that's what love looks like. That's what it means to matter to someone." He turned back to the piano, his scarred hand hovering over the keys. "Daniel was everything I wasn't. Confident, charming, destined for greatness. When he asked for help with the song, when he told me he wanted to give you something perfect but couldn't figure out how to finish it, I said yes. Because I wanted to give you something too. Even if you never knew it came from me." "So you wrote a love song for another man to give to me?" "I wrote a love song for you," Nathan corrected gently. "Daniel just delivered it. He knew I had feelings I couldn't express. He wasn't cruel about it. He offered to tell you the truth, but I said no." "Why?" Nathan met her eyes. "Because you were meant for someone like him. Someone brilliant and confident and whole. Not someone like me. Not some scholarship kid who couldn't afford new shoes and didn't know which fork to use at dinner." Victoria's tears spilled over. "And then he died. And then he died." Nathan's voice was barely a whisper. "And I let the song be his legacy. Because it made you happy. Because it gave you something to hold on to. And I went home and tried to forget I'd ever been anyone other than what I am now." The silence stretched between them, heavy with 16 years of unspoken truth. Victoria wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. "What happened to you? Professor Gray said you were talented. Really talented. Why are you fixing pipes instead of playing concert halls?" Nathan held up his right hand, turning it so she could see the scars that webbed across his palm and up his wrist. Old scars, thick and ropey and permanent. 3 years after that summer, I signed a contract with a performance company. Your father's company, actually. Sterling Productions. Victoria's blood turned to ice. It was supposed to be my big break, a nationwide tour, recording contracts, everything I'd ever dreamed of. Nathan's voice was flat now, reciting facts like a man reading his own obituary. Opening night, there was an accident. Stage rigging collapsed. I got my hand caught trying to push a cellist out of the way. By the time they pulled me out, the bones were crushed. He flexed his scarred fingers and Victoria saw the slight tremor, the unnatural angles where the bones had healed wrong. 3 surgeries. 18 months of rehabilitation. The doctors said I'd never play professionally again. The investigation concluded it was a cost-cutting measure gone wrong. Someone approved substandard equipment to save money. He looked at her. Your father's company settled quietly with everyone involved. I got enough to cover my medical bills barely. Then the contract was terminated and I was adrift. Victoria couldn't breathe. Her father, the man who had raised her, shaped her, pushed her to become the empire builder she was today. Did you know? She whispered. When you took this job here, did you know who I was? Not at first. I needed work, any work. Sarah was dying and the medical bills were eating us alive. I applied everywhere, and Sterling Corp was the only place that called back. Nathan's jaw tightened. Then I saw your name on the directory, and I wondered. And then I saw you, and I knew. Why did you stay? Nathan was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was barely audible. Because I'm a coward. Because seeing you from a distance was better than not seeing you at all. Because even after everything, your father, the accident, all the years I spent trying to forget, I couldn't walk away from you. Not again. Victoria reached out and took his scarred hand in both of hers. The skin was rough-ridged with scar tissue but warm. Alive. You're not a coward, she said. You gave me the most beautiful gift anyone's ever given me, and you never asked for anything in return. You watched your dreams die because of my family's negligence, and you still came back. You still played. You still... Her voice broke. Nathan looked at their joined hands, his expression wondering. As if he couldn't quite believe she was touching him. As if he'd spent 16 years convinced he didn't deserve to be touched. Victoria, he said softly. Ingrid. I need you to know the song was never about credit. It was never about being recognized or remembered. It was about you. Only ever about you. Every note I wrote, every phrase, every pause, it was all a letter I never had the courage to send. She lifted his hand to her lips and kissed his scarred palm. Then let me read it now. All of it. No more hiding. No more running away. Nathan's eyes glistened. Are you sure I come with a lot of baggage? A broken hand. A daughter who needs stability. A past that's more holes than substance. I have nothing to offer someone like you. You have everything. Victoria's voice was fierce now, certain. You have truth. You have talent. You have a heart that's been broken and put back together so many times it's more scar tissue than muscle. Just like mine. She reached up and touched his face, her fingers tracing the lines that time and grief had carved there. I spent 16 years building walls, she whispered. Convincing myself that love was weakness, that power was the only thing that mattered. And then you played that song, and every wall came crashing down. I can't go back to who I was before. I don't want to. Nathan closed his eyes. When he opened them again, there was something new in his expression. Something that looked almost like hope. What happens now? He asked. Before Victoria could answer, the lobby doors burst open, and everything changed. Marcus Cole strode through the lobby doors like a man who owned the world. Behind him, 2 men in dark suits flanked a third figure. Older, silver-haired, carrying himself with the imperious bearing of someone who had spent 30 years making people bend to his will. Richard Sterling. Victoria felt her blood freeze. Her father hadn't set foot in this building since she'd forced him into early retirement 2 years ago. She'd restructured the board, consolidated her power-built walls so high he couldn't climb over them. And yet here he was, walking through her lobby at 11 o'clock at night, like he still had the right to be here. "So it's true," Richard said, his voice dripping with disdain. His cold eyes moved from Victoria to Nathan, then back again, taking in their joined hands the intimacy of their position at the piano. "My daughter has been sneaking around with the help." Victoria released Nathan's hand and stepped forward. "What are you doing here, father?" "Saving you from yourself, apparently." Richard's lips curled. "Flynn called me. Said you've been making a fool of yourself over some janitor who's trying to extort you with a sob story about an old accident." "Flynn had no right to contact you. Flynn is going to be your husband in 4 weeks. He has every right to be concerned about the woman he's marrying." "No." Victoria's voice was cold. "He's not." Marcus stepped forward, his face flushed with barely contained rage. "Ingrid, we talked about this." "No, Marcus. You talked. I listened. And now, I'm done listening." She met his eyes without flinching. "The engagement is off. You'll receive formal notice from my lawyers tomorrow." For a moment, nobody moved. The lobby was silent, except for the soft hum of the heating system and the distant sound of wind against the windows. Then Marcus laughed. It was an ugly sound, sharp and brittle. "You can't be serious. You're throwing away $1 billion merger for him." He jabbed a finger at Nathan. "Look at him, Ingrid. He's a janitor, a nobody. He fixes toilets for a living." Nathan stood slowly from the piano bench. He didn't say anything, but there was something in his stillness that made Marcus take an involuntary step back. "His name is Nathan Reed," Victoria said quietly. "And he's worth more than you'll ever be." Richard made a dismissive sound. "Enough of this nonsense. Ingrid, I raised you better than this. You're the CEO of a billion-dollar company. You don't throw away everything we've built because some broken-down musician played a pretty song." Victoria's voice sharpened. "There is no we, father. You were forced out 2 years ago. This company is mine now, and I'll run it however I see fit." "You'll run it into the ground if you keep making decisions with your heart instead of your head." "At least I still have a heart." The words hung in the air, sharp as broken glass. Richard's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. Surprise, maybe. Or recognition. He'd spent decades teaching his daughter to be cold, calculating, ruthless, and now she was throwing those lessons back in his face. "You know who this man is, don't you?" Richard asked, his voice silky now. "Dangerous." "You know about the accident at Sterling Productions?" Victoria's jaw tightened. "Yes." "Then you know he's just here for a payday. He's been planning this for years. Get close to you, play on your sympathies, convince you that he's some kind of tragic hero. And once you're married, he'll take you for everything you're worth." "That's not true." Nathan's voice was quiet, but it carried. "I never wanted anything from her. I never asked for anything." Richard turned to look at him. Really look at him for the first time. His eyes were cold, assessing the way a predator sizes up potential prey. "Nathan Reed," he said slowly. "The pianist. I remember you now. You were one of the performers we signed back in, 2013, promising talent. Terrible accident." He clicked his tongue. "Such a shame about your hand." Nathan's scarred fingers curled into a fist at his side. "A shame that happened because your company cut corners on safety equipment. Allegedly." Richard smiled, showing teeth. "The investigation was inconclusive. We settled out of court as a gesture of goodwill. If you had any real case, you would have sued." "I couldn't afford a lawyer. I could barely afford to eat." "Then perhaps you should have been more careful with your finances." Richard turned back to Victoria. "You see, this is who you're defending. A man who couldn't even manage his own career, let alone be a suitable partner for someone of your stature." "Get out!" Victoria's voice was ice. "Excuse me. I said get out. She stepped toward her father, and something in her expression made even Richard Sterling take a step back. This is my building, my company, and you are not welcome here. Ingrid, you spent my entire life teaching me that love was weakness. That power was the only thing that mattered. You arranged my engagement to a man I despise because it was profitable. You destroyed the career of the one person who ever gave me something real, something pure, something that wasn't about money or power or strategic advantage. Her voice cracked, but she kept going. 16 years ago, Nathan wrote me a song, a beautiful song, and he never asked for credit, never asked for recognition. He just wanted to give me something that would make me happy. And then you crushed his hand and threw him away like garbage, and you never even knew, you never even cared that you destroyed the only person who ever loved me without wanting something in return. Richard's face had gone pale. That's ridiculous. You don't even know this man. I know him better than I've ever known you. Victoria's eyes were burning. I know that he raised a daughter alone after his wife died of cancer. I know that he worked 3 jobs just to keep a roof over her head. I know that even after everything you did to him, he never became bitter, never became cruel. He just kept playing, kept giving, kept loving because that's who he is. That's who he's always been. She turned to Marcus. And you? You think I don't know about the financial irregularities you've been threatening me with? You think I don't know that you've been skimming from your own firm for years, cooking the books to hide your losses? Marcus's face went white. How did you? I'm a CEO, Marcus. I do my due diligence. I've had investigators looking into you for months. I was willing to tolerate your mediocrity for the sake of keeping peace with my father, but now... She smiled, and it was not a kind smile. Now I have no reason to protect you. You're bluffing. Try me. Marcus looked at Richard, then back at Victoria. His jaw worked silently for a moment. Then he lunged. Not at Victoria, at Nathan. It happened fast. 1 second Marcus was standing by the lobby doors, the next he was charging across the marble floor, his fist raised, his face twisted with rage. Nathan didn't move. He stood his ground calm and still, and when Marcus's fist came at his face, he simply turned, let the blow glance off his shoulder, and caught Marcus's arm in a grip that stopped him cold. Don't, Nathan said quietly. It's not worth it. Marcus struggled, his face purpling. Let go of me, you piece of... I said don't. There was something in Nathan's voice that made Marcus stop struggling. Something old and hard and unbreakable. The voice of a man who had survived worse than a rich boy's temper tantrum. Nathan released him, and Marcus stumbled back, breathing hard. You'll regret this. Marcus snarled at Victoria. Both of you. I'll destroy you. I'll go to the press, the board, everyone. I'll make sure everyone knows that the great Victoria Sterling threw away her empire for a crippled janitor. Go ahead, Victoria said, and I'll make sure everyone knows that Marcus Cole is a fraud and a thief. We'll see whose story the press finds more interesting. Marcus's face contorted. For a moment Victoria thought he might attack again. But then Richard put a hand on his arm. That's enough, Richard said. His voice was cold, but there was something else in it now, something that sounded almost like defeat. We're leaving. Father. I said we're leaving. Richard turned toward the door, then stopped. He looked back at Victoria, and for just a moment, the mask slipped. She saw the old man beneath the armor. The father she'd spent her whole life trying to please, trying to become, trying to escape. You're making a mistake, he said quietly. I hope you know that. Maybe, Victoria replied, but at least it's my mistake to make. Richard held her gaze for a long moment. Then he turned and walked out into the snow, Marcus stumbling after him. The lobby doors closed with a soft click. And then there was silence. Victoria stood frozen, her heart pounding, her whole body trembling with the aftershock of what had just happened. She'd done it. She'd actually done it. She'd cut ties with her father, ended her engagement, destroyed the carefully constructed life she'd spent decades building. And she felt free. "Victoria." Nathan's voice soft and concerned. She turned to find him watching her, his gray-green eyes full of worry. "Are you okay?" She laughed, a strange, breathless sound that was half sob, half release. "I don't know. I think I just blew up my entire life." "Do you regret it?" She considered the question, really considered it. Her father's face pale with shock. Marcus's threats. The merger that would never happen now. The board members who would question her judgment. The investors who would wonder if their CEO had lost her mind. "No," she said finally. "I don't." Nathan crossed the distance between them and took her hands in his. His scarred fingers intertwined with hers, warm and steady. "I'm sorry," he said. "I never meant for any of this to happen. I never wanted to cause trouble for you." "You didn't cause trouble. You told the truth. The trouble was already there. I was just too blind to see it." "Your father..." "My father is a man who values power over people. He always has been. I spent my whole life trying to be like him, trying to make him proud. And all it did was make me miserable." She squeezed his hands. "You reminded me that there's another way to live. That love doesn't have to be transactional. That some things matter more than money and power." Nathan's throat worked. "Victoria, I need you to understand something. I don't have anything to offer you. No money, no status, no connections. I'm a 53-year-old janitor with a broken hand and a daughter who depends on me. If you're looking for a partner who can match what you've built, stop." Victoria placed her finger on his lips. "I don't want a partner who can match what I've built. I want a partner who can help me remember why I built it in the first place. I want someone who sees me, really sees me, not the CEO, not the heiress, not the ice queen everyone thinks I am." She dropped her hand. "When you played that song, I felt something I haven't felt in 16 years. I felt alive. I felt like the girl I used to be before grief turned me into stone. And I don't want to lose that feeling. I don't want to go back to being numb." Nathan's eyes glistened. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying, I want to try. Whatever this is between us, I want to see where it goes. No expectations, no pressure. Just two people who found each other across years and loss and impossible odds, trying to figure out what comes next." For a long moment, Nathan didn't respond. He just stood there, holding her hands, looking at her like she was a miracle he didn't dare believe in. Then he spoke. 16 years ago, I wrote you a love song. I was 18 years old, invisible, convinced that I'd never be good enough for someone like you. And I gave that song away because I thought you deserved someone better." He lifted her hands to his chest, pressed them against his heart. "I've spent 16 years regretting that decision. Wondering what might have happened if I'd been brave enough to tell you the truth. Wondering if things could have been different." His voice dropped to a whisper. "I'm not 18 anymore. I'm old and scarred and tired, and I have nothing to offer you but a worn-out heart that still beats for you after all these years. But if you're willing to take a chance on me, if you're willing to let me try, I promise I will spend whatever time I have left making sure you never regret it." Victoria's tears spilled over. She didn't try to stop them. "Nathan, I love you," he said. "I loved you when I was a boy, and I love you now. I never stopped. I never could." She kissed him. It wasn't planned, wasn't calculated, wasn't anything like the careful, controlled interactions she'd learned to substitute for real emotion. She simply rose on her toes and pressed her lips to his, and the world fell away. He tasted like coffee and longing, and the ache of 16 years spent waiting for something that might never come. His scarred hand came up to cup her face, gentle as a prayer, and she felt something inside her break open, something that had been locked away for so long she'd forgotten it existed. When they finally pulled apart, they were both crying. "Well," Victoria said, her voice shaking, "that's one way to end an argument." Nathan laughed a real laugh, warm and surprised, and pulled her into his arms. She buried her face in his chest, breathing in the scent of him, feeling his heart beat steady and strong beneath her cheek. "What happens now?" she asked. "I don't know. I've never done this before, whatever this is." "Neither have I." She pulled back to look at him. "We should probably figure it out." "Probably. Tomorrow?" Nathan's eyes crinkled. "Why wait until tomorrow?" "Because it's almost midnight, and I just ended my engagement and confronted my father and kissed a man I barely know, and I think I need a moment to process all of that before I make any more life-changing decisions." He nodded slowly. "That's fair." "But Nathan..." "Yes." She took his face in her hands, looked into his eyes, and spoke with absolute certainty. "Whatever we figure out, whatever comes next, I want you to know that I'm not going anywhere. This isn't a whim. This isn't a rebound from Marcus or a rebellion against my father. This is me choosing you, for real, for good." Nathan's breath caught. "I don't deserve you," he whispered. "Maybe not, but you have me anyway." She kissed him again, soft and quick. "Now go home, get some sleep, hug your daughter, and come back tomorrow so we can figure out what the rest of our lives looks like." Nathan held her gaze for a long moment. Then he nodded, stepped back, and headed toward the door. He paused at the threshold, turned back. "Victoria." "Yes." "Thank you. For believing me. For giving me a chance. Thank you for writing me a song." He smiled a real smile, one that transformed his whole face, and made him look for just a moment like the boy he'd been 16 years ago. "I'll write you another one," he said. "A better one. Something that's just ours." And then he walked out into the snow, and Victoria was alone. She stood in the empty lobby for a long time, listening to the silence, feeling the weight of everything that had just happened settling onto her shoulders. Tomorrow, there would be consequences. Tomorrow, there would be battles to fight, decisions to make, a company to protect from the fallout of her choices. But tonight, there was only this: the memory of a song, the warmth of a kiss, and the impossible, terrifying, exhilarating feeling of being truly alive for the first time in 16 years. Victoria sat down at the piano. Her fingers found the keys, and slowly, haltingly, she began to play. It wasn't Midnight Promise, she didn't know how, but it was something. A melody that came from somewhere deep inside her, simple and imperfect and real. She played until her fingers ached, until the snow stopped falling, until the first gray light of dawn crept through the windows, and somewhere across the city, in a cramped apartment with a clanking radiator and a 7-year-old girl sleeping in the next room, Nathan Reed sat at his own battered piano and played the same melody. Different notes, different hands, but somehow impossibly the same song. Two hearts finding their way back to each other across the silence of 16 years. The fallout came faster than Victoria expected. By 9 o'clock the next morning, her phone had exploded with notifications. News alerts, text messages from board members, 17 missed calls from her communications director. Marcus had moved quickly. The headline on the business section of every major outlet was some variation of the same story. Sterling CEO ends engagement allegedly involved with company janitor. The articles were carefully worded. Marcus's lawyers had clearly been involved, but the implication was clear. Victoria Sterling had lost her mind. The billion-dollar merger was dead. And somewhere in the background, anonymous sources whispered about concerning behavior and questions about leadership stability. Victoria read the first 3 articles, then put down her phone. She'd expected this. She'd prepared for it. What she hadn't expected was how little it hurt. For years, she'd lived in terror of public humiliation. The thought of being exposed, criticized, judged it had kept her up at night, driven every decision, shaped every relationship. She'd married herself to power because power was the only armor that worked. But now, sitting in her office with the morning sun streaming through the windows, she felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. Peace. Her assistant knocked on the door. "Ms. Sterling, the board is requesting an emergency meeting. They want to discuss..." The situation. Tell them I'll be there in an hour. Also, there's a Professor Edmund Gray in the lobby. He says it's urgent. Victoria's heart jumped. Send him up. Edmund arrived looking like he hadn't slept. His silver hair was disheveled, his tie askew, and he was carrying a worn leather briefcase that bulged with papers. I saw the news, he said without preamble. Marcus Cole is a snake. Tell me something I don't know. All right. Edmund set his briefcase on her desk and opened it. I've spent the last 12 hours going through my archives. Everything from that summer at Berkshire, letters, recordings, program notes. He pulled out a stack of yellowed papers. I found proof. Victoria's breath caught. Proof of what? That Nathan Reed completed Midnight Promise. That Daniel Hayes asked for his help. That Nathan deliberately stepped back and let Daniel take credit. Edmund spread the papers across her desk. It's all here. Daniel's original draft, just the first 8 bars. Nathan's handwritten continuation. A letter Daniel wrote me asking my opinion on a collaboration that might be complicated. Victoria picked up one of the pages with trembling hands. The handwriting was young, uncertain, but unmistakably deliberate. Notes and annotations crowded the margins. This is Nathan's. Yes, I found it in a box of student work I'd kept from that year. I didn't remember it until last night when I started looking. Edmund's voice was gentle. He was 18 years old, invisible just like he said. But God, Victoria, even then you could see the genius, the way he structured the melody, the emotional progression. Daniel was talented, but Nathan was something else entirely. Victoria set down the paper. Her hands were shaking. Why are you showing me this now? Because Marcus Cole is trying to destroy you, and because the truth matters. Edmund met her eyes. Nathan Reed spent 16 years hiding from his own talent because he thought he wasn't good enough. He let another man take credit for his work because he loved you too much to compete. That's not a con artist looking for a payday. That's a man who gave up everything for someone else's happiness. Victoria thought about Nathan's scarred hand, the way he'd held his daughter at the Christmas party, the look in his eyes when he'd finally told her the truth. What do I do with this? She asked. That's up to you. But if you want to fight back against the narrative Marcus is spinning, this is how you do it. You tell the real story. Not the one about a CEO losing her mind over a janitor. The one about a love letter written 16 years ago by a boy who thought he wasn't worthy of the girl he adored. Victoria looked at the papers spread across her desk. Daniel's incomplete melody. Nathan's handwritten continuation. A story that had been waiting 16 years to be told. The board meeting is in an hour, she said slowly. Then you have an hour to decide what kind of story you want to tell. The boardroom was tense when Victoria arrived. 12 faces stared at her from around the polished table, some sympathetic, some hostile, most carefully neutral. These were people she'd worked with for years. People she'd promoted, protected, fought alongside. Now they were sitting in judgment, waiting to see if their CEO had finally cracked. Thank you all for coming, Victoria said, taking her seat at the head of the table. I know there are concerns about recent events. I'm here to address them. Gerald Morrison, the longest-serving board member, a man who had known her father for 40 years, spoke first. Victoria, we've all seen the news. The merger with Cole Investment Partners is dead. Marcus is making statements to every outlet that will listen. And frankly, some of us are wondering if the rumors have any truth to them. Which rumors specifically? That you've become involved with a maintenance worker. That you ended your engagement on impulse. That you're making decisions based on emotion rather than sound business judgment. Victoria let the words hang in the air for a moment. Then she stood, walked to the window, and turned to face them. 3 months ago, I hired a private investigator to look into Marcus Cole. Would you like to know what he found? The room went silent. Marcus has been embezzling from his own firm for years. He's cooked the books to hide massive losses. The merger he was proposing wasn't a partnership, it was a lifeline. He needed our capital to cover his debts, and once he had access to our accounts, he would have drained us dry. Gerald's face had gone pale. You have proof of this? Documented evidence, bank records, witness statements. I was planning to confront him privately and give him a chance to withdraw gracefully, but then he attacked a man in my lobby and ran to the press with lies, so I'm done being graceful. She let that sink in. As for the maintenance worker, his name is Nathan Reed. 53 years old, single father, former concert pianist whose career was destroyed by an accident at Sterling Productions 12 years ago. Victoria's voice hardened. An accident caused by cost-cutting measures approved by my father. An accident that crushed Nathan's hand and ended his dreams. He received barely enough in the settlement to cover his medical bills, and he's spent the last decade scraping by while raising a daughter on his own. Victoria, someone started. I'm not finished. She walked back to the table and placed Edmund's papers in front of Gerald. Nathan Reed is also the true composer of a song that changed my life. 16 years ago, when we were both teenagers at a summer music camp, he wrote a melody for me, a love letter in musical form, and then gave it away. He let another boy take credit because he didn't think he was worthy of me. She looked around the room, meeting each pair of eyes in turn. So yes, I ended my engagement. Yes, I confronted my father. And yes, I intend to pursue a relationship with Nathan Reed. But I didn't do any of those things because I'm unstable or irrational. I did them because for the first time in 16 years, I found something real, something true, something that matters more than money or power or strategic advantage. The silence stretched. Then Martha Chen, the youngest board member, a woman Victoria had mentored since her first day at the company, spoke. What do you need from us? Victoria felt something loosen in her chest. I need you to trust me. I need you to give me time to clean up the mess Marcus has made. And I need you to believe that I'm still the same person who turned this company into a billion-dollar enterprise. I haven't lost my mind. I've just found my heart. The vote was unanimous. Victoria Sterling remained CEO. Marcus Cole's accusations were officially deemed unfounded pending investigation. And when the press came calling, the board statement was clear. Victoria Sterling had their full confidence and support. The real battle came 3 days later. Victoria released the evidence against Marcus to the Securities and Exchange Commission. Within hours, federal investigators were crawling through Cole Investment Partners, and Marcus's name was suddenly attached to words like fraud and embezzlement, rather than jilted fiancé. The narrative shifted. Suddenly, Victoria wasn't the crazy CEO who'd thrown away a merger for a janitor. She was the shrewd businesswoman who'd uncovered a con artist before he could destroy her company. But Marcus wasn't finished. He called her on a Wednesday evening, his voice slurred with alcohol and fury. You think you've won, he snarled. You think you're so clever. But I know things about your father, Victoria. Things that would destroy the Sterling name if they came out. What things? The accident that ruined your precious janitor. It wasn't just cost-cutting. Your father knew the equipment was faulty. He knew someone could get hurt. But he went ahead anyway because replacing it would have cost too much. I have documents, emails, proof. Victoria's blood ran cold. You're lying. Am I? Ask your father. Ask him what really happened at Sterling Productions. Ask him why Nathan Reed wasn't the only one who got hurt that night. The line went dead. Victoria sat in the dark for a long time, Marcus's words echoing in her head. Then she picked up her phone and called the one person she'd sworn she'd never speak to again. Father, we need to talk. Richard Sterling looked older than Victoria remembered. They met at a neutral location, a private club on the Upper East Side, the kind of place where powerful men made deals that shaped the world. Richard was already seated when Victoria arrived, a glass of scotch in front of him, his face lined with exhaustion. I wondered when you'd call, he said. Victoria sat down across from him. Marcus contacted me. He says he has proof that you knew the equipment at Sterling Productions was faulty, that you knew someone could get hurt. Richard didn't flinch. Marcus is a desperate man grasping at straws. Is he lying? Silence. Father, is he lying? Richard lifted his scotch, took a long drink, set it down. His hand trembled slightly, age or something else. No, he said finally. He's not lying. Victoria felt the ground shift beneath her. The equipment was old. We knew it needed to be replaced. But the budget was tight that year, and I made a decision. I calculated the risk. I decided it was acceptable. Richard's voice was flat, emotionless. I was wrong. You knew Nathan could get hurt. I knew someone could get hurt. I didn't know who, and frankly, I didn't care. That's how business works, Victoria. Sometimes you make hard choices. Sometimes people get hurt. The trick is to make sure the people who get hurt aren't the ones who matter. Victoria stared at her father. This man who had raised her. This man whose approval she'd spent her entire life chasing. This man who had shaped her into the person she was: cold, calculating, ruthless. And for the first time, she saw him clearly. Nathan mattered, she said quietly. He was a pianist, a dime a dozen. Talented maybe, but replaceable. The world is full of talented people who never amount to anything. He wrote me a song. So I've heard. Richard's lips twisted. A pretty story. The invisible boy who loved the princess from afar. Very romantic. But romance doesn't build empires, Victoria. Romance doesn't keep shareholders happy or competitors at bay. No, it doesn't. Victoria stood. But it's the only thing that makes any of it worthwhile. Richard looked up at her, and for just a moment she saw something flicker in his eyes. Regret, maybe, or recognition. The understanding that he had lost something he could never get back. What are you going to do? He asked. I'm going to do what you never could. I'm going to tell the truth. I'm going to make things right. And I'm going to build something that matters, not because it makes money, but because it makes a difference. She turned toward the door. Victoria. She stopped. I never meant for you to end up like me, Richard said quietly. Hard, cold, alone. I thought I was teaching you to survive. I didn't realize I was teaching you to forget how to live. Victoria didn't turn around. I know, she said. That's why I'm not going to make the same mistake. She walked out of the club and didn't look back. The truth came out 3 weeks later. Victoria released everything. The documents, the emails, the evidence that Richard Sterling had knowingly endangered his employees to save money. She did it publicly in a press conference that made national news, standing in front of 100 cameras and admitting that her own father had committed what amounted to corporate negligence. I can't change what happened 12 years ago, she said. I can't give Nathan Reed back the career that was stolen from him. But I can acknowledge the truth. I can take responsibility for the harm my family's company caused. And I can do everything in my power to make sure it never happens again. She announced the creation of the Daniel Hayes Nathan Reed Music Foundation, funded by a personal donation of $10 million. The foundation would provide scholarships to young musicians from low-income backgrounds, the kind of kids who had talent but no resources, dreams but no connections. She announced reforms to Sterling Corporation's safety protocols, overseen by an independent board that included representatives from employee unions and occupational safety organizations. And she announced that her father, Richard Sterling, had agreed to step down from all advisory positions and charitable boards associated with the Sterling name. The press went wild. Some called her brave, some called her foolish, some called her a traitor to her own family. But Nathan, watching the press conference on a battered television in his cramped apartment, felt something break open in his chest. Lily tugged at his sleeve. Daddy, why is Miss Victoria on TV? She's telling the truth, sweetheart. About what? Nathan looked at his daughter, this bright, beautiful girl who had kept him alive through the darkest years of his life, and smiled. About everything. Victoria came to see him that night. She knocked on his apartment door at 9 o'clock, still wearing the dress she'd worn to the press conference, her hair disheveled and her eyes red-rimmed from exhaustion. "Can I come in?" Nathan stepped aside. She walked into his apartment, this tiny cramped space with its clanking radiator and second-hand furniture, and looked around. If she was shocked by the poverty, she didn't show it. She just turned to face him, her expression raw and open. "I did it," she said. "It's done. I saw. My father is finished. Marcus is facing federal charges. The foundation is established. Everything I promised, it's all happening." Nathan nodded slowly. "You didn't have to do any of that." "Yes, I did." Victoria's voice cracked. "I had to do it for you. For me. For everyone my family hurt over the years." She stepped closer. "Nathan, I spent my whole life building walls. Protecting myself. Keeping everyone at a distance because I was terrified that if I let anyone in, they'd hurt me the way losing Daniel hurt me." "Victoria, let me finish." She took his hands in hers, and he felt her trembling. "You tore down every wall I had. You showed me that love doesn't have to be transactional. That sometimes people give things away without expecting anything in return. That sometimes the most extraordinary people are the ones everyone else overlooks." She brought his scarred hand to her lips and kissed it. "I love you," she whispered. "I love you, and I'm terrified, and I don't know what I'm doing. But I know that I don't want to do it without you." Nathan pulled her into his arms. They stood like that for a long time, holding each other in the cramped living room, while the radiator clanked and the city hummed outside the windows. Two broken people finding their way back to each other across the wreckage of the past. "Daddy?" They pulled apart. Lily stood in the doorway to her bedroom, rubbing her eyes, her dark curls wild from sleep. "Is Miss Victoria staying for breakfast?" Nathan looked at Victoria. Victoria looked at Lily, and then simultaneously they both started to laugh. "Yes," Victoria said, dropping to her knees to look Lily in the eye. "If that's okay with you." Lily considered this for a moment. Then she nodded solemnly. "You can have the good chair, the one that doesn't wobble." "Thank you. That's very generous." "You're welcome," Lily yawned. "Daddy, can Miss Victoria hear me practice piano tomorrow? I'm learning a new song." Nathan's throat tightened. "I think she'd like that very much." Lily smiled a bright, unguarded smile that made Nathan's chest ache and padded back to bed. Victoria stood slowly, her eyes glistening. "She's wonderful. She's everything." "I can see that." Victoria took his hand again. "Nathan, I know we're doing this backward. I know there are 1,000 reasons why this shouldn't work. But I want to try. I want to build something real with you, with Lily, with whatever future we can make together." Nathan looked at this woman, this fierce, brilliant, broken woman who had blown up her entire life to stand beside him and felt something he hadn't felt in a very long time. Hope. "So do I," he said. And in that moment, in that cramped apartment with its clanking radiator and second-hand furniture, two people who had spent 16 years on opposite sides of an unbridgeable gap finally found their way home. 1 year passed. It passed the way years do when you're finally living, instead of just surviving in a blur of small moments that somehow add up to everything. Breakfasts at Nathan's cramped kitchen table. Lily's piano recitals at the community center. Late nights at Victoria's penthouse talking until dawn about nothing and everything. The slow, steady work of learning how to be together after spending so long apart. It wasn't easy. Nothing worth having ever is. The press didn't let up for months. Every tabloid in the country ran stories about the CEO and the janitor, the billionaire heiress, who'd thrown away her empire for a broken-down musician. Some were sympathetic. Most weren't. Victoria learned to ignore them. Nathan learned to hold her hand when she couldn't. The board remained supportive but cautious. Victoria had to fight for every decision, prove herself over and over again. The Marcus Cole investigation dragged on for months before finally resulting in federal indictment. Richard Sterling retreated to a beach house in Florida and stopped returning her calls. But through it all, there was Nathan. Nathan, who showed up at her office with coffee when she'd been working too late. Nathan, who held her when the pressure became too much. Nathan, who looked at her like she was the only thing in the world worth seeing. And there was Lily. Lily, who decided within the first week that Victoria was going to be her new best friend. Lily, who demanded bedtime stories and piano lessons and explanations for why grown-ups were so complicated. Lily, who climbed into Victoria's lap one evening and said very seriously, "You make my daddy smile. He didn't used to smile before." Victoria had cried for an hour after that. Nathan held her the whole time. The Daniel Hayes Nathan Reed Music Foundation launched in March. The ceremony was held at Berkshire Music Academy in the same auditorium where Daniel had first played Midnight Promise for a crowd of awestruck teenagers. Professor Edmund Gray gave the opening remarks, his voice thick with emotion, as he talked about second chances and unfinished symphonies. Then Nathan took the stage. He hadn't performed publicly since that Christmas Eve at Sterling Tower. The thought of it still made his hands shake, still brought back memories of the accident and the surgeries, and the long years of believing he would never play again. But Victoria was in the front row, Lily beside her, and somehow, that made everything easier. He sat down at the grand piano, adjusted the bench, flexed his scarred fingers over the keys. 16 years ago, he said into the microphone, I wrote a song for a girl I loved. I was too scared to tell her it was mine, too convinced that I wasn't good enough. So I gave it away, and I spent the next 16 years regretting it. He looked at Victoria. She was crying already. But here's the thing about music. It doesn't die. It doesn't fade away. It waits patient and eternal until someone is brave enough to play it again. He smiled. This song waited 16 years for me to find my courage. I think that's long enough. He began to play. Midnight Promise filled the auditorium like a living thing, achingly beautiful and impossibly tender. But this time, the melody didn't end where it used to. This time, Nathan kept playing new phrases, new harmonies, a coda he had written in the months since Victoria came back into his life. The music spoke of loss and redemption, of second chances and unexpected grace. Of two people who had found each other across years and distance and the wreckage of their broken dreams. When the last note faded, the auditorium erupted. Standing ovation. 500 people on their feet, applauding and cheering and wiping tears from their eyes. Nathan stood from the piano bench, overwhelmed, and looked for Victoria in the crowd. She was already moving toward the stage. They met in the middle, her climbing the steps, him reaching down, and when their hands touched, Nathan pulled her up beside him. The applause grew louder. Someone started chanting, "Kiss her," and the rest of the audience took up the cry. Nathan laughed and looked at Victoria. Well, the people have spoken. Since when do you care what people think? Since never. But I've been wanting to kiss you all day anyway. She kissed him. The crowd went wild. Afterward, at the reception, Edmund Gray found Nathan standing alone by the window, watching Victoria charm a group of potential donors across the room. She's good at that, Edmund observed. Working a room. Making people believe in things. She's good at everything. So are you. Edmund placed a hand on Nathan's shoulder. I should have said this years ago. I should have told the truth about the song, made sure you got credit. I failed you, Nathan. I'm sorry. Nathan shook his head. You didn't fail me. You did what you thought was right. Daniel was dead. The truth wouldn't have brought him back. But it might have changed things for you. Maybe. Or maybe I needed to walk this path. Maybe I needed to lose everything before I could appreciate what I had. Nathan's eyes found Victoria again. If things had been different, if I'd gotten credit for the song, if my career had taken off, I might never have ended up at Sterling Tower. I might never have seen her again. Edmund smiled. You really believe that everything happens for a reason. I believe that we make meaning out of the chaos. We take the broken pieces and build something new. Nathan turned to face his old teacher. That's what music is, Professor. It's taking the pain and turning it into beauty. It's finding hope in the darkest places. It's playing anyway, even when your hands don't work right anymore. Edmund's eyes glistened. You sound like a teacher. Funny you should mention that. 6 months later, Nathan Reed stood in front of his first class at the Berkshire Music Academy. 20 students stared back at him, teenagers from backgrounds, just like his scholarship kids, who played because they had to breathe, not because they expected fame or fortune. They were nervous, uncertain, hungry, in ways they probably didn't understand yet. Nathan understood. He'd been one of them once. My name is Nathan Reed, he said. 35 years ago, I sat in chairs just like yours, convinced that I wasn't good enough to be here. Convinced that talent was something other people had, the kids with money and connections and famous parents, and that kids like me were just pretending. He held up his scarred hand. 12 years ago, an accident crushed this hand. The doctors said I'd never play professionally again. For a long time I believed them. I gave up on music. I gave up on myself. I spent years fixing toilets and changing light bulbs, convinced that my dreams were dead and buried. He lowered his hand. But here's what I learned. Dreams don't die easy. They wait. They hide in the corners of your heart, in the muscle memory of your fingers, in the songs that play in your head when you're trying to fall asleep. And if you're lucky, if you're brave enough, they give you another chance. He sat down at the piano in the corner of the classroom. I'm not here to teach you technique. You'll learn that from professors who are better than me, who have hands that work properly and careers that didn't get derailed by bad luck. I'm here to teach you something else. He began to play a simple melody, gentle and unassuming. I'm here to teach you that music isn't about being the best. It's about being honest. It's about taking everything you feel, the joy, the pain, the hope, the fear, and turning it into something beautiful, something that connects you to other people, something that matters. The melody grew, became more complex, more emotional. Some of you will make it. You'll play in concert halls and record albums and see your names in lights, but most of you won't. That's the reality of this business. Most of you will end up doing something else, teaching or accounting or fixing toilets like I did. He stopped playing and looked at them. And that's okay. Because the point isn't the destination. The point is the playing. The point is what music does to your soul while you're making it. The point is the way it connects you to something bigger than yourself. He smiled. So, who wants to play first? The first hand went up, tentative, then another, then another. Nathan watched them, these scared kids who reminded him so much of his younger self, and felt something settle into place in his chest. A sense of rightness, a sense of purpose. This was what he was meant to do. Not perform, not compete, not chase fame. Teach, guide, help the next generation of invisible kids find their voices. And every evening when class was over, he drove home to an apartment that didn't clank anymore. Victoria had bought him a new place, insisted on it, wouldn't hear any argument, and found Lily waiting for him at the door. How was school, Daddy? Good. How was yours? We learned about fractions today. They're confusing. Tell me about it. And later, after dinner, after homework, after Lily had been tucked into bed with her favorite stuffed bear and a goodnight song, Nathan would sit at the piano. Victoria had given him a gorgeous Steinway, the kind he'd dreamed about as a scholarship kid, and play. Sometimes Victoria joined him. She was learning slowly, haltingly, her fingers fumbling over keys that seemed determined to resist her. But she kept trying, kept practicing, kept showing up. "Why is this so hard?" she asked one night after botching a simple scale for the 100th time. "Because you're learning something new. New things are always hard. I run a billion-dollar company. I negotiate contracts that would make your head spin. Why can't I play a C major scale?" Nathan laughed and covered her hands with his. "Because music isn't about control. It's about letting go. Stop trying to make the keys do what you want and start listening to what they're telling you." Victoria frowned at the piano like it had personally offended her. Then she took a breath, relaxed her shoulders, and tried again. This time the notes flowed. "Oh," she said softly. "See? You just have to trust it." She turned to look at him, and there was something in her eyes, something vulnerable and odd and impossibly grateful. "How do you do that?" she asked. "Do what?" "Make everything seem simple. Make me feel like I can do things I never thought I could." Nathan kissed her forehead. "That's what love is, Victoria. Helping someone see themselves the way you see them." She was quiet for a moment. Then, "I want to marry you." Nathan's heart stopped. "What?" "I want to marry you. I've been thinking about it for months, trying to find the perfect moment, the perfect words. But there is no perfect. There's just this. Us. Right now." She took his face in her hands. "Nathan Reed, I spent 16 years building walls and running empires and convincing myself that love was weakness. And then you played a song and everything changed." Her eyes were fierce, determined, utterly certain. "I don't care about perfect moments. I don't care about fancy proposals or romantic gestures. I just want you. Forever. If you'll have me." Nathan couldn't speak. His throat was too tight, his heart too full. So he did the only thing he could think of. He kissed her. And when they finally broke apart, both of them crying, both of them laughing, he said, "Was that a yes?" That was absolutely a yes. The wedding was small. Just family and close friends gathered in the garden of the Berkshire Music Academy on a perfect autumn afternoon. Professor Edmund Gray officiated. Lily served as flower girl, scattering rose petals with the utmost solemnity. Victoria wore white, simple and elegant, and Nathan wore a suit that actually fit for once in his life. When it came time for the vows, Nathan pulled out a piece of paper. His hands were shaking. "I wrote something," he said. "I tried to say it without notes, but I kept messing up, so—" He laughed nervously. "Bear with me." Victoria squeezed his hands. "Take your time." Nathan unfolded the paper. "Victoria, Ingrid. The first time I saw you, I was 18 years old, invisible, convinced that I would never be worthy of someone like you. I watched you from across crowded rooms and dreamed of a life I thought I could never have. I wrote you a song and gave it away because I thought that was all I deserved, to love you from the shadows, to make you happy without you ever knowing I existed." His voice cracked. "I spent the next 35 years carrying that song in my heart. Through the accident, through the surgeries, through the years of fixing toilets, and wondering if my life meant anything. And then one Christmas Eve I played it again, and you heard it, and everything changed." He looked up from the paper, met her eyes. "I don't have much to offer you. I'm not rich or powerful or important. My hand doesn't work right anymore, and I'll probably never play the way I used to. But I love you. I've loved you since I was 18 years old, and I'll love you until I'm nothing but dust and memory." He folded the paper and put it away. "So here's my vow. I promise to play for you every day for the rest of my life. I promise to teach Lily everything I know about music and life and love. I promise to hold you when you're sad and celebrate with you when you're happy and stand beside you through whatever storms come our way." He raised her hand to his lips. "And I promise that I will never ever hide in the shadows again. Because you taught me that I deserve to be seen. You taught me that my music matters. You taught me that the invisible boy from the scholarship program grew up to be someone worthy of love." Victoria was sobbing now, tears streaming down her face. "Your turn," Nathan whispered. She laughed a watery, broken sound and wiped her eyes. I didn't write anything down, she admitted. I thought I'd be able to improvise. But now I'm standing here looking at you and every word I planned has gone out of my head. That's okay. Just tell me what you feel. Victoria took a shaky breath. What I feel is terrified. I'm terrified because I've never loved anyone the way I love you. I'm terrified because you see through all my armor, all my walls, all the careful defenses I spent my whole life building. You see me the real me and somehow you love her anyway. She reached up and touched his face. I spent 16 years grieving a song I thought was written by someone else. And then I found out it was written by you, this quiet, gentle, extraordinary man who gave away his greatest gift because he thought I deserved better. Her voice steadied. But here's the thing, Nathan. You are the best. Not because you're famous or successful or powerful. Because you're kind. Because you're patient. Because you raised a daughter who's brave and bright and wonderful. Because even after everything life threw at you, you never stopped playing. She took both his hands in hers. So here's my vow. I promise to be worthy of the song you wrote me. I promise to be a good partner to you and a good mother to Lily. I promise to use my resources and my power to make the world a little better, a little kinder, a little more like the world you see when you play. She smiled through her tears. And I promise that I will spend the rest of my life making sure you know every single day that you were always worthy of love. Always. From the very beginning. Edmund Gray cleared his throat. Well, he said, his own voice thick. I think that covers it. Nathan Victoria, by the power vested in me by a somewhat dubious online ordination, I now pronounce you husband and wife. He smiled. You may kiss the bride. They did. And in the front row, Lily cheered so loud that birds scattered from the nearby trees. The reception was held in the Academy's main hall, surrounded by pianos and music stands and the ghosts of 1,000 melodies. Victoria danced with Nathan, then with Lily, then with both of them together, a stumbling, laughing, perfect mess of a family dance. As evening fell, Nathan found himself at one of the piano's fingers, moving almost without thought over the keys. Victoria slid onto the bench beside him. Play me something, she said. What do you want to hear? Something new, something that's just ours. Nathan thought for a moment. Then he began to play. The melody started simple. 2 notes in conversation, tentative and seeking. But it grew, became richer, more complex. There were moments of dissonance that resolved into unexpected harmony passages that stumbled before finding their rhythm silences that spoke louder than sound. It was the story of them. Everything they'd been through, everything they'd survived, everything they hoped for. All of it poured into music. When he finished, Victoria was crying again. What's it called? Nathan looked at her, this fierce, brilliant woman who had torn down her walls and opened her heart and chosen him of all people to spend her life with. Second movement, he said, because the first movement was Midnight Promise. That was the beginning of our story. The part I wrote when I was too scared to tell you how I felt. He touched her face gently. But every great piece of music has more than one part. And this is the movement where everything changes. Where the themes from the beginning come back but different. Transformed. Better. Victoria leaned into his touch. Will there be a third movement? I hope so. And a fourth. And a fifth. As many as we need. Nathan smiled. That's the thing about love, Victoria. It's not a single song, it's a symphony. And we're just getting started. She kissed him soft and sure. And somewhere in the hall, Lily was spinning in circles with Professor Edmund, both of them laughing. And outside, the autumn stars were coming out bright and countless and eternal. And the music was still playing soft and steady, a heartbeat beneath everything. Years passed. Nathan taught at Berkshire, watched his scholarship students grow into artists and teachers and dreamers of their own. Some made it big. Most didn't. All of them carried something of what he'd given them, not just technique, but heart. The understanding that music was about more than perfection. Victoria ran Sterling Corporation, but differently now. More humanely. More honestly. She funded arts programs in underprivileged schools, created pathways for working-class kids to access opportunities that had once been reserved for the wealthy few. She became known not just as a brilliant businesswoman, but as someone who used her power to lift others up. Lily grew. From a 7-year-old with scraped knees and chocolate-stained fingers, she became a teenager, then a young woman, then a music teacher herself, following in her father's footsteps, carrying forward the legacy he'd built. And through it all, there was music. Every evening, no matter how busy they were, Nathan and Victoria sat together at the piano. Sometimes they played Midnight Promise. Sometimes they worked on Second Movement, adding new phrases, new harmonies, new chapters to their ongoing story. Sometimes they just sat in silence, hands intertwined, grateful for everything they'd found. On their 10th anniversary, Victoria surprised Nathan with a concert. Not just any concert. A full performance of all his compositions, played by the students he'd taught over the years in the same auditorium, where everything had begun. Nathan sat in the front row, overwhelmed as piece after piece unfolded. Some he recognized. Some had been adapted, transformed, made new by the young musicians who played them. All of them carried his fingerprints, his heart, his soul, his belief that music could heal anything. When it was over, Lily, now 22, beautiful and confident, took the stage. "Most of you know my father's story," she said into the microphone. "The accident, the years of struggle, the song that brought him back to music and to love." She looked at Nathan and her eyes were shining. "What you might not know is that he almost gave up, more than once. He almost let the world convince him that he was nobody, that his music didn't matter, that broken things couldn't be made beautiful again." She gestured toward the young musicians behind her. "But he didn't give up. And because he didn't give up, all of us are here tonight. All of us learned something from him, not just how to play, but how to keep playing, how to find hope in the darkest places, how to turn pain into beauty." She stepped aside, and the musicians began to play. It was Midnight Promise, but different. Fuller, richer. 100 variations on the theme Nathan had written as an invisible 18-year-old, woven together into something new and magnificent. Nathan wept. Victoria held his hand and wept with him. And when the music finally faded and the audience rose to their feet in thunderous applause, Nathan understood something he'd spent his whole life trying to learn. He had never been invisible. His music had touched lives he'd never known about: Daniel, who had shared it with Victoria. Victoria, who had carried it through 16 years of grief. The students who had learned from him and passed his lessons on. Every note he'd ever written, every melody he'd ever played, had rippled outward in ways he couldn't see or measure. He had always mattered. He had just been too scared to believe it. After the concert, Nathan and Victoria walked hand in hand through the Academy gardens. The night was warm, the stars bright, the air filled with the distant sound of students practicing in the dormitories. "Thank you," Nathan said quietly, "for everything. For believing in me when I couldn't believe in myself. For fighting for us when it would have been easier to walk away. For giving me a life I never dared to dream was possible." Victoria stopped walking and turned to face him. "Do you know what I think about sometimes?" she asked. "That night at the Christmas party, when you sat down at that piano and played and I heard Midnight Promise for the first time in 16 years. What about it? I think about how close I came to missing it. I was about to leave. I had my coat on my driver waiting. If I'd left 5 minutes earlier, I never would have heard you play. I never would have known you were the one who wrote that song. We never would have found each other." She reached up and touched his face. "But I didn't leave. Something kept me there. Call it fate, call it luck, call it the universe looking out for us. Whatever it was, I'm grateful for it. Every day. For the rest of my life." Nathan pulled her close. "I spent 35 years loving you from the shadows," he said, "convinced that I wasn't good enough, that someone like you could never love someone like me. He kissed her forehead. But I was wrong. I was wrong about all of it. And I'm glad, so incredibly glad, that I finally found the courage to play. They stood there for a long moment, holding each other beneath the stars. Two people who had been broken and rebuilt, who had lost everything and found it again, who had learned that love wasn't about perfection or worthiness or strategic advantage. Love was about showing up, about being brave enough to let someone see you, really see you, and trusting them not to look away. Finally, Victoria spoke. "Play me something." Nathan smiled. "What do you want to hear?" "Something new. Something that's just for tonight." He thought for a moment. Then he took her hand and led her back inside to the piano in the empty auditorium, where the ghosts of 1,000 melodies still lingered in the air. He sat down at the keys and began to play. The music rose through the darkness like a prayer, gentle, hopeful, achingly beautiful. It spoke of gratitude and wonder, of second chances and hard-won joy. It spoke of a boy who had been invisible, and a woman who had been armored, and the impossible, extraordinary love they had built together. Victoria listened with her eyes closed, tears streaming down her face. When the last note faded, she opened her eyes and looked at him. "I love you," she said simply. "I love you too." And that was enough. That was everything. Outside, the world kept spinning. Tomorrow, there would be challenges and setbacks and the ordinary struggles of everyday life. But in that moment, in that quiet auditorium with the stars shining through the windows and the music still echoing in the air, none of that mattered. What mattered was this: two people who had found each other, two hearts that had finally come home, two broken things that had been made beautiful again. Because that's what love does. It takes the pain and turns it into music. It takes the invisible and makes them seen. It takes the hopeless and gives them reason to believe. And if you're lucky, if you're brave enough, it gives you a second chance to play the song you were always meant to sing. Nathan Reed knew that now. He'd learned it the hard way, through years of loss and struggle and quiet desperation. But he'd learned it. And every time he sat down at the piano, every time his scarred fingers found the keys, every time the music rose up from somewhere deep inside him, he remembered. He remembered that he was worthy, that he mattered, that even the most broken things could be made beautiful again. All you had to do was keep playing.